Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Yay, hello. Welcome to the panel Off the Beaten Track. We're going to explore how music can thrive beyond our big cities, looking at the growing importance of regional places, smaller towns, rural communities within the live music ecosystem. We're bringing together perspectives from venue programming, artist touring and talent development, and I'm hoping this conversation will examine how artists build sustainable careers outside traditional hubs, how promoters and agents can create stronger touring routes, and how we can help venues grow their audiences as well as develop new talent. So I'm going to introduce the panelists. First of all, I'll go to you, Chris. We've got Chris Wemyss from MacArts. He's a venue manager in MacArts and Galashiels. Began promoting small community events with a team of volunteers and went on to run Stout Out Festival for 7 years, is that about right? And now leads MacArts, which was recently named Best Small Venue at the Scottish Live Music Awards. A very nice round of applause for MacArts, please. And I'm not going to start off with favourites, but MacArts is actually my local venue as well. Next we have Corse, the founder of CCM Live, working internationally across artist and touring promotion. And he is working as Showcase Scotland, the team behind Celtic Connections now. Yeah. Also festival producer at Orkney Folk Festival, which you did actually mention has been running for 43 years. Crazy. And not on the board in front of us here, but we have Tom Traber, who represents the Irish Pub Association Germany, which is a network of 100 venues working with more than 300 artists, you told me earlier, both local and touring artists. And you started your career as head of promotions at ZYX Music. Is that? Yeah. So we're looking at kind of an artist perspective as well as a venue perspective. And then finally we have Quirina, and I'm not going to try and pronounce your second name, so if you could just pronounce it for me.
It's Geijsen. It's Dutch, but the name is actually Austrian.
Did you catch that? Yes.
It's fine. Just Q.
Quirina is head of programming at Vorstin in Hilversum, where she's programs across 2 halls and beyond. She's also closely involved in talent development through platforms as well as teaching at Herman Brood Academy. So thank you very much for being part of the panel. Okay, I'm going to just jump straight in with a question to all of you. What is one misconception or myth that people have about touring outside big cities? And who still believes in this myth the most? Is it artists, agents, or the wider industry? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Yes.
For us, the biggest issue around that is agents deciding that a venue that's very rural is going to pull sales away from the central belt. So people that put on a show in Edinburgh don't want to put on a show in Galashiels. Now we know from postcode mapping that people don't travel from Edinburgh unless it's a major act. So we are not pulling any sales away from central belt. But there's still, you get into discussion and then the discussion runs dry and you find out the agents only play in Edinburgh. And when pushed, they're worried about losing sales from the Edinburgh show. So that's a misconception. It just is not accurate.
Mm-hmm. Craig, do you have something to add about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the misconception is that every market behaves the same, and that's just not true. And I think that that's largely driven by industry and artists who are based in cities and haven't actually experienced that community-rooted or that rural music upbringing or just support network or that sort of thing, who might look at, just 'cause what Chris was saying there, I've had promoters who might be putting on an Edinburgh show saying, no, well, I'd rather, no, or I think you shouldn't be playing in like Dunfermline or basically anywhere south of Edinburgh until Newcastle, that sort of thing. But that comes, I think, from those who, are just assuming that everyone plays the same, that audiences will travel an hour plus for gigs, and that might be true, but I find that is more correct within rural areas. Like in the Highlands, you would never second guess how far someone will travel to go to a gig. But, I mean, how many of you would go between Glasgow and Edinburgh to go to a gig? It's probably quite low. So to therefore assume that a gig, say in Galashiels, is going to detract from an Edinburgh audience is totally a counterintuitive thought process. So it would just be, I think my greatest misconception is that all markets play the same, and they don't.
Yeah. Quirina, is that the same for you, being slap bang in the middle of two major cities?
Yeah. So my venue is 20 minutes away from Amsterdam and also 20 minutes away from Utrecht, which are two major cities in the Netherlands. And we actually researched this because we have a lot of agents specifically that don't want to play our venue exactly because of what Chris already told us. And our research showed that most people from our area, and our area has around 100,000 people, don't want to travel more than 15 kilometers away for music shows. So that means that they don't want to travel to Amsterdam and Utrecht per se. So we have enough crowd to sell tickets actually. And the common misconception basically is, you don't sell tickets in Hilversum, which then is not true. Otherwise would have been bankrupt already.
How about you, Tom? Do you have a different misconception, or do you echo kind of what the rest of the panel is saying?
Well, I would say the market in Germany, especially for small venues, when you have a little bit of bigger artists, is quite difficult because they have a policy that, for example, if an artist would play in Frankfurt, that nobody else can book it in a circle of 100 or 80 kilometers. The cities are quite close together, so that means the next possible city would be Cologne. Everything what is in between would be not possible. So that makes it, unfortunately, for smaller venues, a little bit more difficult to get a little bit well-known artists. So that makes it, on the other hand, much more important to work with local bands or smaller bands to give them an opportunity to go on tour. But I say, well, that's a missing link from from bigger tours to passing out smaller cities or smaller venues. They're definitely doing a great job with that.
Really interesting. Okay, move on to the next question I have for you. This kind of carries on from what Tom just said, actually. What opportunities do smaller cities and towns offer that maybe big markets can't? Could it be loyal audiences, or talking about Orkney Folk Festival, maybe like a destination appeal? And as we know, in the Borders, there's definitely a community connections aspect. Craig, can I come to you first?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that, it's not a one versus the other, but if you're looking at more rural community-based venues versus the cities, for just by contrast, then I think it is overlooked the venues and promoters in those towns and those counties areas. Promoters might operate over quite a wide, a county-wide basis. They have built up really strong audiences through years of fighting against multiple hurdles and multiple obstacles to try and gather that audience. They have hugely loyal audiences that will turn out and support something because it's happening locally. Very often a large portion of the workforce that's on those shows will be volunteers, and they do it because of the love of it, because the love of live music happening, and looking upon that as kind of, it's volunteer run, that really annoys me if that ever kind of comes through from artists or promoters or anything like that, because actually it's completely disregarding the love that very often is missing when a venue or an entity is entirely commercially run. And I wouldn't ever overlook that, because if you can sell out, say, Chris's venue, or do well there, that audience are going to come out. As long as you're releasing something and giving people a reason to keep on coming back to see you, they will, versus an audience that could have a choice of about 20 shows happening in Glasgow or Edinburgh any night.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you could probably echo that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what it brings to an artist is probably way wider than that one show, because we're part of an ecosystem. And if you're not playing a number of small shows, you're not gaining experience. If these venues disappear because you're not playing the shows, there's no stepping stone to start off on the career to take you up to the bigger venues. So I think the most important message, I think, from this panel is artists, agents, managers need to speak to the venues, because what you're going to get from every venue is different. And, one venue might have really high sales and, you're building an audience, fantastic. But you may go to another venue where there's only 20, 30 people in the audience, but they really appreciate you've gone to that audience, they buy the merch, and they become lifelong fans. So it's definitely worth playing them. But I think absolutely most important thing is we're all part of an ecosystem, and you have to all support each other, buy tickets for the small venues, so you've got that step up to the next stage, so the venues are still there in 5 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah, Quirina, I was going to ask, is it similar, kind of the community aspect with your venue?
Yeah, for sure. So we really focus on community programming actually in our small hall. But I actually wanted to say something about my big hall, because we have, so we're a Dutch venue and we have a lot of Dutch artists touring big halls, like 800 to 1,000 capacities. And at a certain point, the artists get older, so they get sick of doing and basically they are doing the same round every time. So they want to do different rounds. And if you haven't built your crowd in local communities, then the problem might be that at a certain point in your career, that would be the only show that doesn't sell out. So you had an artist touring in the Netherlands, and they were finally doing Hilversum instead of Utrecht. And they were angry at us because we were the only show that didn't sell out. And I was like, yeah, but in the 20 years that you've had a career, you didn't build a crowd here locally. And that also shows that we have a unique crowd here that has to get to know you. So also when you want to have a career that lasts, it's good that you build local communities, specifically in your own country.
That's some really valuable advice. Tom, from your perspective, from the Irish pubs and the community that you've grown throughout, it seems really interesting that there is this kind of like desire for artists to come back and play again and again. Do you want to jump in and say what you think the community is throughout your 100 venues?
Yeah, like I would say, if you're a smaller venue or if you're in a smaller city, I mean, what I said before, like you have to play more locally. On the one hand, is a plus point, because you're close on the artist, you will know more what's going on in your area, and also as a smaller venue, you have to specialize a little bit in your program. As an artist, if you have fans, we have the same as with the venues. You have fans that like your venue and the type of music you pick, and also if you give younger artists a chance to play there, the next time they come again. So we had that quite a lot, that people would come again and again, and also the audience would appreciate that, because they know on one hand they don't have to drive so far. What's a plus point? And these days it's much harder to get into the cities, parking. It's quite a big effort, and instead of just going around. And I think another big point in these days is also that the smaller venues, you're closer to the artists. They don't disappear after the show backstage and go to the tour bus. They usually go off the stage and speak to the people. So, and I think that's quite a nice familiar point, and also a nice interaction with the artist when you're interested in music. And I think that's definitely a USP for smaller venues, and also getting artists back. And I think also artists, we had that quite a lot of times, if you gave them a chance in their younger days, they won't forget you when they are also like a little bit more successful.
Yeah, definitely. As myself, from an artist, it's one of my favorite things to interact with the audience after. And some of my greatest moments have been in the venue after the show. Okay, we're going to touch on this point, but I don't want to dwell on it. But what do you think are the distinct challenges that come from touring and presenting live music in rural places? And Chris, I'm going to you.
Challenges is always selling tickets. The more tickets you sell, the greater the income. It makes everything easier. But the biggest we're a relatively small venue, 300 capacity standing, 150 seated. We've got equivalent to 3 full-time staff, a couple of part-timers, and just to get through all of the work required to make a show happen is really difficult. And then if we're not bringing enough money to support the venue, that's not a good position to be in. So the biggest challenge for us is putting the shows on and making enough money to survive. So anything that we can put in place to assist making enough money is fantastic. And obviously that comes in with Music Venue Trust putting so much into small venues, supporting with all the new projects that are coming online. In fact, anybody who hasn't signed up to Music Venue Trust email list, you should absolutely do that. It's not just for venues. Anybody that's interested in in grassroots venues and playing at grassroots venues, you should get on the mail list.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just take it easy this afternoon. Craig, do you have any points to add and challenges in Orkney or beyond, even Celtic Connections or elsewhere?
So just touching on what Chris said about tickets, from an agent's point of view, and kind of, so when we have any tour in place, every Monday, I'm sure it's an agent's dream, is just to be chasing ticket counts and see how things are selling. The one thing that I would caution looking upon shows that are in more rural areas is that ticket sales will generally be slower, because if a venue is, if people are just kind of in tune to being able to go to their venue, and they, particularly now where everyone's more cash strapped than ever, there's perhaps not the reason to be buying up front. And I'm sure that's the same within cities as well, but particularly locally, there'll be, certainly I've found a much higher tendency for people to just pay on the door unless they know something is going to sell out. So I would caution being put off by that and kind of thinking, oh, this show's not selling, we're just going to have to pull it, because the audience is there, they've probably just not committed. Or even if they've mentally committed, they've maybe just not parted with their cash yet. And that is, it's quite a difficult thing to just tackle head on and go with and believe that it'll happen. But I think there just has to be that belief there, and to trust in the programmer who knows, and the venue, the promoter rather as well, that knows what they're doing. Logistically, the challenge would certainly just be the logistics of routing and paying closer attention to them than just assuming you can go from A to B as you might need. And obviously anywhere you can drive to is great, but when you're looking at the associated artist costs around playing somewhere that's relatively rural, you're probably not going to be able to walk to a Premier Inn to get whatever sort of cheaper hotel rooms than a locally operated place. So having an eye on that and saying, well, actually, do we need to drive a bit after our show to get those cheaper rooms, or are we happy to stay locally? Just that sort of stuff needs attention sooner. But also just paying attention to where these places are. No names mentioned, but even just this week I've been dealing with people attending an island festival, not mine, who hadn't stopped to think that they couldn't get from that island on Sunday to being in Glasgow at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. It's a completely innocent oversight, but it's just paying attention to the availability, the cost of flights, the cost of ferries, whatever CalMac might be throwing at us just now. They're not good at the moment. And allowing space within the schedule to work with that so that you're then not putting yourself under undue stress, or that's having an impact upon other shows as well. And specifically from Orkney, kind of connected to that as well, our festival is venue-based, but because of where we are, we take artists for 3 or 4 days. We don't ever really do single plays because it's not financially viable. We pay for artist transport, and that on top of a gig fee is just unsustainable to only be spreading it over one show. So again, it's having an awareness from the artist's part that it's a greater time commitment, but you'll have a loyal audience as a result of that, and it's worth that commitment for the long-term benefits that Chris and others have already said.
Yeah, I think the idea that rural touring is to be treated differently, and you can't kind of copy and paste what you do in the main cities is a really important point. Tom and Quirina, you've got something to add?
Yeah, I think it's a very important part. It's marketing, specifically marketing and how you speak to crowds as an artist, because we notice that artists that speak to our local community, they say Hilversum, they don't say Amsterdam because it's close to Amsterdam, they speak to Hilversum, they speak to local crowds, that works much better, but it takes a bit more effort and a bit more time and a bit more thinking about, okay, where am I going to play and how am I going to speak to the local crowds. But if you speak to them directly, they are so loyal and they feel so much appreciated. So I think that's really important. And I think we also use higher marketing budgets, so because it takes more time, as was already said, to sell tickets. But as an artist, it's really good to think about that as well.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting as well, because, yeah, it's a different beast, isn't it? Tom, do you have anything to add with even your marketing hat that you use when booking for the Irish pubs?
Yes, we do. We spoke about the challenge before. What is the challenge and what's getting harder in the market? Like on one hand is the financial side. Energy costs are growing, minimum wage is growing. You have to find a balance that people can afford it, but you still, as a company, have to make the profit. Like you have to pay your bills and everything. So I would say the financial side, the pressure is definitely getting harder. Of all kind of different reasons what I just said. The other thing what is getting harder, and you have to be very creative with that, is getting the people to leave their doorstep. It's very easy for them to say, oh, I just listen to YouTube, I order everything at home, I want to leave my flat. And that's a change with the younger people. You have to be very, very creative to do something, to get them out, to make your venue interesting enough that they say, I'm going to leave my house, I want to be there, I want to do something, and I want to pay the price. So that's everything okay for everybody. So marketing is a very big part of it. On one hand, you have to be very creative with your program, what you do. And the topic here is so to leave the beaten track. Also, sometimes it's quite good to do something different or something unexpected. And of course, if you do something, tell about it, promote it. And I quite believe also in interactions. If you something, try to get feedbacks, make people to come, that they can do something in the venue, that they get something, try to communicate with them and try to get an interaction. It's not always possible, but also sometimes possible with the shows you put on, or with the program you put on. I think that's a big challenge to do that, but it's also an opportunity. The world is changing, and you have to be creative. I would say the program and the marketing is definitely important.
And do you think for artists coming through now, what are they potentially missing if they only focus on the major city circuit, and can building something outside the kind of obvious centres can sometimes create a more sustainable career for artists? And Tom, you can lead on about the workshops that you've been running in the Irish pubs for artists. You told me a story about an artist coming back over a kind of prolonged number of years to perform and built this career.
Like for example, what I said, like you can leave the beaten track. Like sometimes you have to find something new. And also, of course, in the past we worked a lot with artists from Ireland, also from Scotland. But you have to find the right music, what suits your venue or suits your audience. So one example what I want to tell is we had a showcase in Galway, and we're trying to find artists for the German market. The German market doesn't work with traditional music. You would play your venue empty after half an hour. But I met that wonderful guy. His name is Cachel Johnson. He's a harmonica player, and then he was telling me, "Oh, by the way, I'm doing harmonica workshops." He said, "What? You do harmonica workshops?" And that was it. So we brought him over. We did a whole tour. We did a collaboration with Hona, and we gave the audience harmonicas, and they learned to play a traditional tune in 20 minutes. That was interaction. All the venues were full, and also you have to use that to speak about it. The media is very important, so you can contact all the media. You can contact the press. You can contact the radio stations. You can contact the local television stations. You give them something new to speak about it. If you have more media, you attract more people, and they think, oh wow, that's interesting. I go there the next time, or at least I look at your monthly music program.
Yeah, Craig, I see you nodding your head. Have you got something to add from an artist perspective as well?
Yeah, I think the workshop thing is really interesting because I've had that with like the more folk-based artists that I work with, where even just being able to offer an afternoons workshop, for example, between 4 and 5 p.m. So at a time when they would probably be at the venue anyway, they could fit in the sound check after that. It gives local press something more to kind of lean into. You know, with respect, unknown band playing venue is not news. Like it's not meaty enough for press to really sink their teeth into. So something where people can get involved with it, but also something that, again, not to be too calculating, but something that can also tap into local music teachers or the education system, where, you know, they might not have to pay to be part of it, but they might be able to get the word out to another, you know, audience. Particularly anyone learning an instrument, they'll usually have parents that are very keen to get them to experience that close up, both in gigs, but also to learn from someone and to inspire the next generation. And even if you're only starting out, you'll still be looked up to by teenagers, for example, who would want to learn something. And I think just, you mentioned perhaps a more sustainable model of touring. I think with artists, you know, at any stage of their career, I think everyone gets to a point, as has been said, you know, money is tighter everywhere. So artists, in order to sustain a living, either need to tour more or tour bigger. And usually it would come through tour more. And actually having those local audiences that won't travel into a city will do that. And they don't necessarily have to be on the same tour. You know, from a marketing perspective, doing a more rural tour or a Highlands and Islands tour or a Borders tour or whatever could be another outlet for touring 6 months out from playing major cities or whatever. And again, that gives a different press angle for people to jump on board and really support it, and basically keeps that revenue coming so that you can sustain a full-time living doing it.
Yeah, I think that probably Quirina and Chris maybe can tell examples of artists who have done that and then come back to your venue and you know, maybe played to a few people and then gone to even sell out the venue. Do you have any examples of that you can bring to mind?
Honestly, in the Dutch landscape, it's usually that we build the artists and that they then move on to Amsterdam and Utrecht. So the actual ticket sales, the actually earning bit, goes to the bigger cities. So sorry, in my time I didn't have an example of this. It's very, yeah.
That in itself is super valuable, because that plays into like what happens in a rural venue. Is it? I'm sure Chris has got a similar story then.
Yeah, so we're still a relatively young venue. So we don't have lots of people that have come up through the venue, gone on to have major careers and come back. But we have identified that's a thing that needs to be developed. So through working with young bands and supporting the young bands, we're just waiting for these bands to start coming back. And you can see them growing in their career. They've come up through the schools, become fairly competent musicians, played gigs with us, started getting support slots with us, then the national support slots, and then get their own headline shows. So when we see somebody on Barrowland stage with a name behind them, you know, having played at our venue, that's really moving to see that happening. And you can see it's just come from that really basic support right at the beginning, when you're working with really good quality sound engineers who will talk young people through sound checking. Why are we doing what we're doing here? And they then go from our venue to an Edinburgh venue knowing what's expected of them. And it makes such a difference for young people who feel confident going on even gig number 2, have been told, get a tuner pedal, stuff like that. You know, it's not a sexy pedal to buy, but yeah, get a tuner. So yeah, the benefits are huge. young people, and we haven't had lots of people coming back, but when it has happened, it's quite emotional standing there in the hall, watching somebody up there that you think, yeah, this is a big thing. This is somebody coming back to this little venue.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show the importance of grassroots music venues in the pipeline as one of those foundational places, and how wonderful to see it, the kind of progression of these artists from buying your first tuner to like playing your own headline show. It's incredible. Oh yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I would have kind of one more thing to add up. What I quite would like to say, because we're speaking about the venues, and I want to say, like, the Irish pubs in Germany, they have a little bit of a different image than in Scotland. I said, like, the pubs in Germany, they are kind of known for live music. People go there to listen to live music, and it's not like a venue to get totally drunk, because our prices are higher. People really enjoy the environment of Ireland, Scotland, and having a beer and listening to music. Having that experience that people come back. I would like to tell one nice story, like especially in West Germany, because then we share our artists. We give them a chance to travel around, but also not so far. We had one artist, he played for us, I'd say the last 10 years. And also he built up his name in local places. He was on a music plan every month, so everybody knew him. He always tried to get signed, and the day came, he got signed with Napalm Records, and then they founded their band, what's called the New Roses, and they played a few years ago. They was the first German band. They played on the Full Metal Cruise with Kiss, because they met them on the concert, and also they just played the farewell tour with Kiss. So that guy started in the Irish pubs. His last album was top 10 in the charts, and he still came to our pub to play for a local fee. So that's a few nice things that people don't forget where they came from. And I just want to say in that point, the pubs in Germany, they get used to give people the platform until they're big enough to go to commercial venues where they have to sell tickets. So there's a time before to get the experience, to get the interaction with the audience, maybe to file a bit on their playlist, and that's where we stand for. So we give these people a platform to go on tour or to play in the individual pubs, because the pubs are full on the weekend anyway. So we pick the artists that would suit that night. And that's much easier for the artists because they get paid, and they just have to interact with the audience and to build up their fan base until they have a management, until they have a booker, and then go to the next smaller venues and to have the chance to fill them up.
Yeah, very important for having that platform to kind of cut your teeth and hone your craft. Okay, I'm going to go individually if that's all right. Craig, wearing both your agency and festival hats, so you can see it from both sides, I guess, what makes a place go from a maybe to definitely worth including on a tour or festival circuit?
A promoter that knows what they're doing. And I think I kind of touched on that earlier, but you'll get, you might see, everyone sees everything on social media, and you might see an artist announce a tour and go, why are they gigging in that place in rural, wherever, shire? And it will almost always be because there's a brilliant promoter there. They're either running a series within a venue that they're hiring, or they're running the venue in-house, but they just know their market and they know the audience, but that they also know their program as well, that they're not just a completely open door to everything that falls in their inbox, because they would very quickly be open 365 days and not be successful. That they have an understanding of where their audience is coming from and what their audience wants to hear, but also will take a risk on newer artists, don't get me wrong. But getting in with that promoter gives you some confidence that you're accessing a built-in audience there that then transfers over to your audience long-term. And to be honest, with an artist, and even for, like, say, international artists that I might work with touring in the UK, those might be the venues that I would look to go to first before they've established hard tickets in the cities, because you know that a musically curious audience is there wanting to see new music. That'll always do it for me.
That's a very interesting bit of information. Even I didn't actually think about, but that makes sense from an international place to have the trust in those promoters. Okay, Chris, you won Best Small Venue at the Scottish Live Music Awards. I've already mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again. What does a community-rooted venue need to do to become that trusted stop on a touring route?
We have a mantra, and I can't use the language because we're being live streamed, but let's just say it's don't be an arse. Treat everybody as you want to be treated yourself. I know it's like common sense, but we get the arrival time for the band, 3 o'clock, there's hot coffee on. So the second people step out the bus, there's hot coffee in the green room. You know, usually we're doing the load-in, nobody drinks it, but the message is the second people step through the door, you want to look after them. And it's little things like that that make your run-of-the-mill venue a really, really good venue. We cook for bands. If one of us didn't cook for the band, I'd be eating chips every night. You know, it's not good, but by spending £20 to feed 2 bands and the working staff, it's another message that we want to look after them. And, you know, we're all music fans. That's why we're doing it. We're not in it to make money. It'd be nice if we made money, but it's not the reason we're doing it. We've never asked an artist to sign a contract. We've never pulled a show because of low ticket sales unless we've agreed with the artist that we don't want somebody stepping out in a crowd of 10 people and it's not practical. We don't want them to not enjoy the show. But, you know, even if ticket sales are low, where we know some of the big promoters would have pulled it 3 months in advance, we know, like you were saying, there'll be late ticket sales. And if necessary, we can set up cafe style, not the death metal shows, obviously, but set up cafe style, some invited guests, and make it feel busy. So it's what makes a small grassroots venue successful is treating everybody like you would like to be treated yourself. It's as simple as that. And then, you know, the most fantastic thing is having worked since 8 in the morning, working through the show and going away at night going, my God, we just did that. And people had their hands in the air, there was crowd surfers, we might have made some money at the bar. You know, it makes it all worthwhile. So we're doing it because we love it. And that's what I think what makes the difference. There are venues in the city where you can go in and look at the bar staff and there's faces, they're all tripping them. Whereas it's often commented from this, we've got a Perspex panel between the stage and the bar, and our bar staff are dancing. And they're all volunteers. They've all given up their free time on a Friday and Saturday night to work in the venue, and they're dancing. It's like, it's the best job in the world. That's why it's a success.
A very, very good mantra. Okay, Quirina and Tom, what have you seen in your regions, so Dutch and German regional ecosystems, that we could learn from in Scotland? What do you think's working that we could learn from you guys?
Well, for that, I don't know enough from Scotland, so that's a bit hard to say. But I think what I notice in the Netherlands specifically is that venues in rural areas, they focus really on community development and also programming together with the community and talent development, developing local artists. And that's something that bigger cities don't do. They have enough shows, they have enough crowds. So and that's really how we, as a not focused on venue, try to make a difference. So really on the social aspect more than just the entertainment aspect. And I would love to see more venues work that way, actually. Just really also, for example, we have a heavy program in our small hall. I can book heavy artists easily. I worked at a heavy office, but I'm not doing it. I've asked a local guy who's really into metal to program it for us, and he easily takes 100 people with him just because he's part of the community locally. So, yeah.
So important for our ecosystem and the future of what we're doing as well.
Yeah, also the organizers.
Yeah. Tom, do you have any words of wisdom that we could learn from?
Well, I can only say what worked for us very well. I think in general, the Scottish market, I do really like it. The people are very open here, and you've got a very strong music scene. But what I can only say from my perspective, from my experience, kind of work together. That's what we did with all the pubs. We work together so that we're stronger, and also there's a much higher communication. And for the artists, I think it's always important, to think out of the box. There's not only venues, there's not only YouTube or Instagram. When you play somewhere, try to build something around. And that's what we did with the Irish pubs. We have the possibility to put bands on, to pay them, and also to create a tour. If you have tour dates, then it's easier to get into the music magazines with the tours, into the local press, into the radio, and it's easier to get sponsorship. Everything is a market. And also companies try to sell their products. So I was always a fan for cross-selling and to get sponsorships. So for example, if you choose through 10 or 20 Irish pubs in your early days, think about that, just to build up your fan base. And then from that side, it's quite easy to get a sponsorship. You would look for a sponsor, what would suit your music, what would suit you, and then let's say a fair bit of the costs are covered. So at least there's something started. And I had the experience, if you work together, if you do a little bit things different than other people do, and then it should work.
Yeah, very interesting about the sponsorships. Okay, so MVT saw another decrease in stops on the touring circuit last year, with only Glasgow now on the primary route in Scotland. What impact does this have on our rural grassroots music venues, the artists who are skipping them, and the communities that they serve? From Chris, I'll come to you with that one.
I think we covered it earlier. It's an ecosystem. If you take away the soil, everything dies. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You've got to tour small venues to get the experience to move up to bigger venues. If you're only going to play Glasgow, there's that risk people are going on stage not really up to working with a big crowd. It's like everybody loses. The artists lose, venues lose. It's just, and culturally, I mean, we are the only standing venue in the whole region. If we lose that, there's nothing. I mean, I'm sure some pubs will pop up with back rooms to put on small acts, but yeah, if you're not touring, everything dies. Everything up the way dies.
Yeah, Craig, what would you say about that from your perspective as an agent? And like, if you said there that you think artists are touring more or touring bigger rooms, like, do you have a perspective on them, of artists that are skipping or just doing Glasgow or wherever?
Yeah, kind of multiple conflicting thoughts here. I think things probably get to a stage within an artist's career where they kind of say, I'm a bit knackered of, being on the road, 80, 100 days a year, whatever. So they want to be touring less. That's understandable. But it's, again, the assumption that an audience that you've gathered, say, across rural Scotland will travel to Edinburgh or Glasgow is quite, I'm trying to find a polite word for it, but it's not great to expect your audiences to travel, huge distances and then be surprised when they don't come. So I think very often that directive, I mean, we're saying this in Scotland, so it's maybe the wrong crowd, but I find very often that directive comes from agents who are perhaps not based in Scotland, don't know the market, and will happily, and I'm saying this as an agent, not to be overly critical, will hand over a tour to a national promoter and say, there you go, can you just go and hire all the venues and book the tours? They're not going to look north of Glasgow and Edinburgh because they don't understand it. Or indeed south, between, I was going to say Newcastle, but Carlisle, rarely gets a look in at times either. So I think that very often comes from, I was going to say a place of ignorance, but it's perhaps just naivety and not understanding the market there, as we said at the top, doesn't behave like others. And if you're not touring there, then certainly from a folk perspective, if you're not going there, other people will. So you're missing out. But as Chris said, that ecosystem, you don't want it to fall. And I think where it's, where there's more and more challenges to touring rurally, then I think having an eye on every part that's connected to it is really important, and not always looking for the easy route, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of carries on to this next question that I've got. If we believe that music matters culturally, do we need to be more ambitious about where it happens? If venues are getting skipped, then we are losing that cultural aspect as well. Do you want to say something, Chris?
I don't know if it's where it happens. It's not that it's not important, it's how it happens. How we make it manageable. How do we put the infrastructure in there to support the touring, even in the places that exist now? And we don't want to lose venues, but if you don't put things, finances, support into how it happens, we won't have the opportunity to look at where it happens. Yeah. So it's supporting things as they are now to allow it to then grow. Yeah,
and I mean one of the things that obviously we champion at Music Venue Trust is that once a venue in a kind of rural area, or as you say, MacArts is really the only grassroots music venue in the area. If anything was to happen and the venue would shut, then that would mean that a whole community then would be without that cultural aspect. How about you guys, Tom and Quirina? Do you have similar thoughts on the culture that the venues bring to their communities?
Actually, yes. Like I think it's very important to keep these communities up. And what we said before, I agree. You have to have the link to your people, and if you would disappear from the market, it's definitely would be a big loss. It is harder and harder to keep it, but also on the other hand, there's a creativity to have it. I think these local venues are very, very important. Also, as I said, kind of for local artists and to develop.
Yeah, basically with us, it works that my big hall earns money, so I can fund my small hall. So if the big artists stop coming because they only want to play Amsterdam, then I can't support my local artists, and also I can't support Dutch talent anymore, and also the community projects we do, and we also work with volunteers. So it's the entire ecosystem for us that falls down a bit.
Yeah. I mean, you've totally hit the nail on the head there. That those touring artists are then paying into this system that then is creating more culture coming out of that venue. So that's super, super important. Okay, well, what can we do for rural and regional touring to be more resilient? Like, what if you could wave a magic wand? What do you think would fix all of our problems, essentially?
In the Netherlands, it would definitely be to fund rural areas more, because for funding we compete with Amsterdam. We compete with the National Ballet, with theater, and then with the big venues in Amsterdam. So we usually don't get national funding because of that. So that's really important to really focus on, okay, well, maybe we don't hit everything if it goes about diverse crowds, but we do make a lot of impact locally. Yeah. It's just a mind shift in what's really important.
Very key. Yeah, I see Chris is nodding his head with you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the changes since COVID, all our local guest houses shut down. So there's now no place locally for bands to stay. So we've got one hotel in the next town that's not cheap. So these major initiatives like providing accommodation within venues could be an absolute game changer for small venues. Just that one aspect of the stuff that Music Venues Trust are doing could be a game changer for us.
Yes, we've got some. Bev, our CEO, was speaking earlier about the incredible initiatives that Music Venue Trust is putting into place, and that one is called Stay the Night. And we've got some booklets about if you would like to read more. There's loads of goodies in there. Craig, what do you think? What can make touring rurally more resilient?
I was going to say, kind of touching, you mentioned funding or potentially looking for avenues to support it. This is perhaps more from an island context, but I don't know if anyone's seen this week that actually Brian Ferguson's had a really interesting series running through the Herald, specifically looking at island-based festivals and the kind of many challenges that are unique to island locations. And the one thing that we've fought for in Orkney specifically, and we're quite lucky in this respect because it is not the same, certainly in Shetland, and I don't know about anywhere in the Western Isles, is that our funding for the festival, and I know that's specifically for a festival, but we are venue-based, so that is still feeding the wider ecosystem, is that our funding from the local authority is actually given to us on the grounds of economic development, not culture, because it values the money that the festival creates and puts back into the wider economy, which is around about £1 million a year, and we're a 4-day festival. We don't get anywhere near that in funding, but ours is ring-fenced so that we don't have to go through the hoops of applying for it every year. There is no national body that does the same thing. Arts funding, without going down too deep a rabbit hole there, is on the basis of art for art's sake, and that's brilliant. But when it comes to festivals who have obvious barriers to growth, and likewise rural venues will be the same, having to state your case for constantly doing something new or something exciting or adding to the program, that is not sustainable. Sustainability for us is existing for another 40 odd years. So that's what we've kind of pushed to try and, it'll not happen overnight, but if there is a way to kind of value the market and look at the wider picture rather than just, times are tough for everyone, and it's very easy to see a headline of, tens of millions of pounds have gone into the arts, and people who are not in any way interested will see that and go, that's just, funding money to disappear. And it's not, because there isn't the wider picture of what's generated out the back of it. And I think, you don't want to over-commodify music or put too much of a price on it, but actually seeing the wider value into the wider area, into restaurants, guest houses, everything like that could actually talk in the way that those that have the financial levers understand.
Yeah, I think that is an absolutely key point, that we don't operate in this artistic bubble, and that we do actually need to have some economic backing to operate. How about you, Tom? Do you have any wish for a resilient rural touring network?
Yes, I think it would be quite nice to get, like in general, more support for artists to make it easier also to tour, and having like a trust who would support that, especially for younger people. It's very difficult. I can only say it for the German markets there is trust, but with the Irish pubs we are not part of it because we are commercial, and we unfortunately always had to finance ourselves. That's the reason why for us so important that we share artists, that we see that our program is attractive, and that also that we work like efficient. But in general, it would be much better if there would be like a better support for especially younger artists to go on the road. In Germany, it's only certain locations that get that. There's quite important thing is a European Culture Fund, but it's also bureaucracy is quite high. There's a long pile of papers you have to fill out to get that, and you have to have certain circumstances, and as a operating business, it's very hard to get that.
We've kind of already kind of commented on this, because you did actually talk about having these partners and brand partnerships and how much that was beneficial. So we'll tie that point in, but what do you think happens when venues, promoters, local partners, or national or international partners work together well in regional areas? And you've already told some success stories, but what do you think? Like Craig, you were speaking also about those promoters that know the areas, and you would definitely use them to launch artists. Do you have any other words of wisdom about those kind of relationships that's worked really well?
Examples escape me, but yeah, I think ultimately, as Chris touched on, like everyone working in a grassroots kind of smaller, or not necessarily smaller, but certainly more rural venue where, you know, the challenges and obstacles are higher just because of your proximity to essential resources are is greater. Everyone working in those sorts of areas is doing it for the love of it. Whether they're doing it as a volunteer or commercially as their job, they might be salaried for 40 hours, but you can guarantee they're probably doing at least half of that again. Everyone does it for the love of it, and it's just that understanding and taking a step back and stopping to think that everyone's coming at the same thing from a slightly different angle, but everyone wants the same end result and the same long-term benefits. Whether that's folk working together, putting on a gig in Scotland, or artists coming in from any part of the world working either directly or with an agency to do the same. It's everyone's ultimately seeking the same end goal, and it's just having that kind of pause for understanding where they're coming from, and just, I guess, the idiosyncrasies of, you know, smaller venues, and even within Scotland, one in Gala will not be the same as one even, I don't know, 10 miles up the road. It's just asking the question and seeking to understand where folk are coming from, I think, is the key to unlocking that success.
Quirina, do you have any kind of like partnerships that you work with that you feel have been successful that we could glean from?
Actually, we do have a lot. We started a big cultural network of Hilversum because we felt like, as a cultural network, that we were. It was tough to get crowds to us. So the film theater had the same problems that we did, the museums, etc. So we started working really close together to share knowledge, but also to make programs. And then also we started to work together with local communities, and I think we got really a lot out of it. And also we now have a live radio show in our venue, which is quite unique because live radio is not a thing anymore. It's actually getting cut quite often right now. We have a metal collaboration. We have a collaboration with the film theater. Yeah, so it's new ways of making stuff work, and it's actually quite creative. We're now working together with an artist to put on a show in our venue, and we are probably going to work together with a classical music organization. So for this artist, it's also an interesting new opportunity to work on their show. So yeah.
Definitely think that it's showing the strength of collaboration is definitely showing that it's helped so much. Yeah,
but also just start to be a front for all things that's cultural and social in your city. We also there's this local punk community. They started squatting a place, and now they do shows there, and we try to support them because it's so important that there's something else that's really easier accessible money-wise than our venue to have. Just seeing those opportunities and support each other, it's really important in rural areas.
Very cool. Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to go to our final question. And this is not a cop-out. You can choose your own venue. This is a place where you can promote as much as possible. So to close, what is one hidden gem on the touring map that people should stop overlooking? And Chris, you can say your own venue if you wish, but you can also choose another one.
Do you know, we the team in the office, we go to gigs all over. So that's one of the relationships we build. A band comes to play at MacArts, and we'll go to see them other places. But I very much like getting off the train and going to Leith Depot, down the bottom of Leith Walk. So lovely little venue, beautiful food. Sneakies is Sneakies, highly recommended. They're actually, do you know, when I go on holiday, first thing I do is check out where the grassroots music venues are. I try to make a point of going to no matter what's on, going to a small music venue, whichever city we're in. District in Liverpool last time.
Oh, are you going to go to Quirina's venue next? That'll be your next stop. How about you, Quirina? Have you got? You can say your own venue. Or you can
No, I'm not going to say my own venue. I love my venue, but I think everything that's on radar.squad.net is really cool because that's the DIY venues in the Netherlands. They're also pretty accessible as an emerging artist internationally. If you have DIY, something with DIY, punk, hardcore, whatever, leftish, every venue that's on there, the squads are really struggling, of course, everywhere, and they are doing really well. I mean, we get funding, not national funding, but we do get local funding. But those venues, they are really important. So everything that's on there. And also a great tip if you're starting out.
Tom, have you got one that you would like to nominate as your hidden gem?
Well, like I would say as a hidden gem I would nominate is probably is the support from the city. Like you don't have to work as a venue on your own. I think for us, it was very helpful have a good joint venture with the city and with the marketing department and the culture department. And I would say this is an important thing. Have a good communication to the locals, to the city, and that if you're good to them, they will be good to you.
Yeah, wise words. Craig, have you got a venue that you would like to nominate as your hidden gem?
Yeah, I'll go local, and this is a point when I say I don't actually live in Orkney. I live just outside Dumfries, but a brilliant touring stop that can actually be brilliant for routing. And if I could just add, actually, those rural venues are your keys to unlocking those huge long drives. If you can go off the beaten track, and actually tie those in between stops A and B. Just up the road from me is a great venue in New Galloway called the Cat Strand, which is only it's 90 capacity theatre, and again that small capacity sometimes puts people off, but you get the warmest reception and just a brilliant welcome from the team there, and they can program just about any